Thank you everyone for joining us today. Firstly, I would like to thank each and every one of you for coming on this webinar with myself and our Commissioner. I would like to welcome my special guest, our newly appointed Queensland Small Business Commissioner, Dominique Lamb. So thank you for your time and joining us here today, Dominique. I would also like to acknowledge and welcome all our agents that are joining us today. We also have a few ALNA business partners who are also watching today. We have the Lottery Corporation with us, News Corp, the Lucky Charm Group. We have ALNA's legal advisor, Hank Spear, and our industrial relations advisor, Tanya Harris. We also have ALNA state general managers from around the nation and a few of our ALNA board of directors as well. So there's a few out there listening to us today, and it's great to see, and they all want to see what Queensland has to offer. So exciting. The Commissioner's Office, I know, has been a great support to our industry, Dominique. Most recently, ALNA's very strong working relationship and dialogue with our previous Commissioner, Marie Adshed. ALNA would like to congratulate you on your new role as our new Queensland Commissioner. We fully support the need for a small business commissioner in our state, and we look forward to continually working with yourself and your team to better our industry. So I will now like to pass everyone over to yourself. I know you've got an exciting presentation to share with us today, and I know you're going to discuss about your particular role, the office role. You have some priorities that you'd like to discuss with us for 2023, and the support services that are available, which are really crucial for our listeners. I know there are a lot out there that aren't aware of the services that are available, so it's really important that when we have webinars like these, that we can share the awareness as far and wide as we possibly can. But before we just step over to yourself, Dominique, I would also like to just mention to everyone at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A there, and that's for asking questions. So what we'll do is at the end of the session, we'll just have a few minutes there to open it up for questions, and our Commissioner can answer them for you today. So, so thank you very much, and I'll pass it over to you, Commissioner.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being with all of you today, and it's wonderful to come back and speak to news agents again after what feels like a little while since I left the National Retail Association. So let me just share my screen with you. Give me 2 seconds. And hopefully
we're on.
There we go. Hopefully got it. Everybody's got it. Fantastic. Look, I thought I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners on the land on which we all meet today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And, you know, as Nicola has said, I was appointed as a Small Business Commissioner as of the 23rd of December last year. So I've been in the role for about 16 or so weeks now, and it's been a very interesting ride. So spending a lot of time moving out and looking into the regions, and certainly getting out and about and meeting, you know, sort of as many small businesses across Queensland and certainly across sectors as possible to get a real snapshot as to what's happening in our economy as a state, and also to understand what the nuanced experiences are of, you know, various different industries and what they're sort of seeing and feeling at the moment. What we are seeing and what we're hearing from small business at the moment is probably pretty consistent with what you all spend some time discussing. So certainly we're hearing about the cost of living increasing, whether it's interest rates or electricity or freight charges, whether it's supply chain issues, or alternatively it is the cost of labour. More and more what we're hearing from a number of surveys that are currently in the market is that taxation is playing on most small businesses' minds, not just payroll tax in terms of it being a Queensland issue, but certainly more broadly the ATO recovering tax debt in a more aggressive way than what we've seen in some time. And we know from some of their figures that about 64% of small businesses are paying on time, but that the rest are certainly going over their due dates, and we know from some of these surveys that there is certainly an absence in terms of financial literacy when it comes to taxation and just simply understanding GST, BAS statements, and some of those basic things. So there are some, interesting trends happening at the moment. We're also hear from many small businesses, whether they're in the regions or in Southeast Queensland, that there is a skill shortage still. I understand retailers are still looking for about 36,000 people, and a lot of that comes down to housing as well. So often we hear we would love to employ, but there is nowhere to house them, and it's taking in some locations up to 12 months to put employees into permanent housing, which is proving to be really, really difficult, especially where there are construction projects throughout the state. And of course, as retailers, we all love when there is infrastructure spend and there's construction going on, because we know that that often directly dovetails into an increase in spend. Probably around that, January, February period, we were hearing from NAB, certainly the Business Chamber Queensland, ComSec, that spending was still quite strong and quite good. And even the landlords were saying to us within centres that foot traffic numbers were very strong. What we have seen as of March and as of that probably last interest rate rise, that there has been a decline in those discretionary spend numbers. And I think, obviously when you look across retail and you take groceries out of those factors, we have seen a softening of those figures, and it's no different in Queensland. We know that anything that is in a discretionary spend, that we are seeing smaller basket sizes, and in some cases just it being very, very quiet, especially in the lead up to Easter. I think not having a further interest rate change has been quite good in terms of the market and what we've seen throughout the state. And realistically, when we look at what's happening in our regions, you can go, from one town to another within an hour and have a completely different experience. And it comes down to what other industries are supporting those locations and those ecosystems. But it is very, very different from location to location. And of course, we can't forget that there have been some further natural disasters in Queensland, and we do at the moment have a number of rural communities still cut off, that have been cut off for about 3 months. So look, I'll start and go into sort of who we are and what we do. And of course, I know that you have had presentations from Marie before, but are my slides moving for you at all?
No,
or are they?
the main slide. No.
Looks like they are not. Oh, there we go. Now it's
Right.
moving. So a little bit about us is, look, we're a team of about 17 people. We operate in 2 streams, the first of which is our assistance stream. And that comes down to the fact that we are set up to minimise the costs and time associated with disputes. Primarily the disputes that we see come through our office and that we're able to send through mediation and work through that with small business around tenancy. So it's landlords and tenants, often in either a retail shopfront or alternatively in a commercial lease. And we're able to kind of work through disputes, whether it's lockouts, whether it's rental increases, whether it's explaining what an option is and some of those basics. It could be a whole raft of other issues that may be occurring in certain locations. The Gold Coast is a really good example of that, where there's been a lot of construction there. We also are able to do that with a number of other types of disputes, including small debt claims. It could be issues around licensing arrangements for equipment. It could be, issues around supply. There is a whole raft of sort of dispute work that we do there. And the idea is that we primarily want to keep people from ending up in the courts, and we want to have it resolved as quickly as possible and in the best way possible so that you can get on with doing business. Our second stream is advocacy. And part of that advocacy is that, we work to collect a raft of data, whether it's working with industry organisations like ALNA, to understand what is impacting your business and what are some of those pain points. And then we provide consultation to the government to inform things like their small business strategy, for instance. Alternatively, it may be advocacy at a federal level with the other commissioners around the country or with a SPEFIO to work out, what do we need to see from various different parties, even if it is a national level. So one of those things at the moment, there's been a whole raft of work around things like retail crime, liquor licensing laws in Queensland, as well as Standards Australia and some of the issues that we're seeing there, and just really feeding in that feedback to make sure that any changes that are occurring from a public policy level don't negatively impact small business.
Absolutely.
So we also run what's called the small business, we're just trying to, there we go, the small business friendly program. And that's where we work with the councils around the state. At the moment, we have 43 of the 77 councils signed on as small business friendly. And what that means is that they basically commit to improving their region to make sure it is a better place to do business. And we've seen some incredible things come out of that, including, you know, the creation of artificial intelligence like Ask Morty at Moreton Bay. We've seen a whole raft of investment in, you know, co-working spaces and hubs and mentoring programs, as well as small business grants. We've seen a raft of activations and placemaking for main streets of CBDs, including things like Renew Cans, where they're placing, you know, brand new different types of business, you know, into shop fronts to activate those locations and sort of minimize some of those antisocial behaviours that happen when people simply leave town or they move out of a space. So the small business friendly program now covers about 78% of the small businesses across Queensland. So at the moment there are 473,000 small businesses in our state. They make up about 97% of our economy, and so they play a really, really big role. And that's why it's important for them to have that voice. And of course, the councils really do play into that.
Excellent.
Some of our priorities, which is a little bit different from potentially what you may have seen from us before. So we've just had our new statement of expectations come from the Minister that sort of identifies what the key objectives are. And some of those key objectives look at things like the workforce plan, it looks at red tape reduction, as well as creating awareness about what exactly our office does and what support we can provide, but also looking at ways to minimise the cost of living for small business as well in tangible ways. So some of what we're doing at the moment in terms of our strategy is that it sits under 4 pillars. One, of course, is awareness, and that's about touching as many small businesses as we possibly can and making sure that they know we're here. But also that feeds into that advocacy component. And for the first time, we're going to have an outreach, a principal outreach person who will go out to businesses and make sure they are engaging in all of those regions, whether it is the chambers, whether it is, you know, other organisations in regional communities that have a really strong presence, to understand what's happening, you know, outside of that southeast corner. But we're also engaging with other organisations such as landlords who typically interact with small businesses that are looking to provide further education. So we want to kind of upskill them and make sure that they're aware of some of what Queensland Government has on offer to provide supports if in the event that their tenants are struggling with, you know, if it could be financial literacy, it could be digital literacy, it could be visual merchandising, but it's about making sure that they have access to all the things that are currently on offer. And part of all of the information that we collect feeds into our assistance. And some of what you will see from us is that we will be creating a whole raft of relationships with landlords, some of those more complex leasing and tenancy issues. And then we'll also be having those translated and dynamically translated to make sure that our culturally, linguistic and diverse communities aren't left behind when it comes to some of these matters.
Absolutely.
Recently on our hotline, we've seen an increase by about 60% in the call volumes that are coming through. And we've also seen, you know, an increase around things such as racism towards tenants, on behalf of landlords, amongst other things, and just poor behaviour sort of on the increase there. There has also been a prevalence of lockouts at the moment, you know, people being unable to pay their rent, not being able to get back their equipment. And these are sort of some of the things that we work through in order to plug in services to assist those small businesses.
Okay.
We'll also be commissioning a whole raft of personas when it comes to the life cycle of a small business, looking at, you know, when they first start, what are, you know, growth areas look like, and then obviously moving to, you know, how do I build a succession plan and looking at exiting with dignity, amongst other things. And all of this will be made available obviously to ALNA and to anyone that, you know, wants to have a look at this information to make sure that we are plugging in those services as, you know, they're best designed to assist small businesses.
Excellent.
So some of the support services which you may be interested in or you may have heard of before, hopefully some of you have taken them up, include Mentoring for Growth. The Mentoring for Growth program has over 330 mentors that you can access for about an hour and a half free of charge via the Queensland Government. It can be on absolutely any topic that you can think of, and look, many people use it for things like obviously cash flow, marketing, digital strategies, or just simply looking at, how do I grow my business? What steps do I need to take to get to, the next level? Or it could even be in employment. We also have a whole raft of other funding opportunities that have come up, including there's currently a grant for $5,000 for human resources assistance. There's also a free micro-credential run out of the University of Sunshine Coast around workforce planning to look at rostering and just simply managing some of what we've seen throughout COVID with absenteeism or just retention of staff, and looking at redesigning how you plan your workforce. There is also a few other initiatives such as EcoBiz, which will have someone come into your business, look at all the different sustainability options for you and try and reduce costs where they can to get you a better outcome, but also help you move along that sustainability journey, which is really quite useful and certainly well received.
Excellent.
One of the other initiatives that is very much taken up by many of our callers has been our financial counsellors. And in fact, the government has just invested about $3 million into providing free financial counselling services to those that are referred into the program. Those financial counsellors, have a very broad remit, and they also work in with what we call our small business wellness coaches as well. These coaches look at the mental health of the business owners, providing further support that they need. And both of them can, in effect, provide up to $5,000 worth of support to other suppliers if the small business requires something. So a good example of that is, you may be in a business that you've had a particular piece of equipment break down, for instance, it might have a rare part. The financial counsellors and the wellness coaches can make a decision to fund the supplier to provide that part, or even to pay for the labour to have that fixed. It could be that you require legal advice about a matter, that's causing you a great deal of stress, and they will seek to assist to fund those things as well. So these are really good sort of tangible outcomes that can be used across the board, and also look at sort of what's happening in your business life as well as what's happening outside of it.
Excellent. So, Commissioner, just on the support services, is the scope there for the the wellness coaches to actually come out and visit our members face to face? Is it all mainly online over the phone?
No, most of it is actually face-to-face. And in fact, they've made a conscious decision to have multiple wellness coaches within each of the regions, and they are tasked at going out to the business and making it as easy as possible for you, so that they can come and meet you face-to-face. And, we know many of your businesses are owned by families too, and meet with other family members that might be experiencing difficult times, or just, exhaustion and the stresses that go along with running a business.
That's great. That's great.
There's a whole raft of small business grants which you may be familiar with that have come up throughout the small business strategy that's currently in existence, and there are three of them. There's a Basics, a Boost, and a Growth grant. There is yet to be another $5 million released around the Boost and the Growth grants as well, and these will be targeted specifically around the retention of staff, looking at making a workplace more somewhere that people want to be. It could be looking at your recruitment strategies amongst other things. So it is heavily focused in sort of finding people and then retaining those people in business, because we know that that is something that's consistently coming through the feedback. So there is a whole raft of opportunity in terms of what is on offer. It's really about finding out what is best for you. And so I really would encourage you to call through to our team, who can often connect you to whoever it is that you may need to go to, or of course go to ALNA and they may have information. But I will say, when I started here, I asked for a copy of all the grants that were on offer, and they provided me with 63 A3 pages, double-sided, of what is on offer. So, it ranges from if you're a female founder to, if you're looking to invest in marketing or if you need HR support. It is very, very broad. So just make sure that you keep an eye out for, what is on offer out of the government, and also with your local councils as well, because I think often we forget that they have supports, and that they certainly offer their own grants, which can be of use as well.
Excellent. Is there any idea on the next rollout of grants coming our way for retail?
It will certainly be shortly. So I would anticipate probably over the next month or so. And look, Small Business Month in Queensland is starting as of May. So there should be a lot of events and certainly a lot of announcements typically in that month.
Wonderful. Great.
So if you need to find us, I'm sure that we'll share these slides. This is where you can find us.
Totally.
But look, we would obviously love to hear from you, and whenever you call in, we have a whole team here. You're always going to get a human. They're always going to be able to engage with you. You're never going to get a voicemail or anything like that, and we have really good response time. So please make sure that you connect with us, and of course we really want to hear what's happening in your business on a day-to-day basis, because often we find that it'll create a trend, or it'll create a reason certainly for us to engage and consult with various departments about things they might have got wrong or they might not understand. So we want all of the information, so nothing's too small.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Commissioner. There's some great insights there on that presentation. Yes, we'll send that presentation out. We have a copy of it to all those that are on the call today, and we'll also put it into our newsletter along with the recording of the webinar, because there are a lot of agents, as you can imagine, are time poor and aren't able to stop to view today's webinar, but we'll by all means send that out in our communications. Look, speaking of your response time for assistance for agents and retailers out there, I just wanted to touch on an incident that happened last week here in Southeast Queensland. One of our members was a horrific incident where they were held up by gunpoint, and very traumatic as anyone could imagine. And they've reached out to ALNA for support, and I contacted your office immediately, and within an hour, one of your wellness coaches had reached out to our member for counselling. It was absolutely fantastic. I've since spoken to that agent on a couple of occasions, and it's times like that where urgent assistance is required. So be it there was police obviously involved and a report taken, and there's counselling coming, but it wasn't in a timely manner. So yeah, your office reached out in great time, and it couldn't have been at a better time, and so we're thankful for that, as well as obviously our member. Yeah.
Well, yeah, look, I mean, it is exactly as you say, times like that. I mean, I think sometimes if you don't know where to go, it's a really good idea just to reach out, because we will find someone that can provide that assistance, even if it's not us. We will do a warm introduction and make sure that you are looked after.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just going to hand you all over to the Q&A. There has been one question pop up on our screen, and it just takes us back to the beginning when we're talking about how an overseas business owner could start a business in Queensland to move here. So the question is, what are the points of interest for an overseas investor to come here to Queensland to buy a business? I guess, is there a minimum criteria of investment spend for them to purchase a business over here in Queensland?
Yeah, so look, I mean, it obviously it's dependent upon whether or not they're looking to purchase in, or alternatively if they're looking to migrate, amongst other things. So there are a few different kind of parameters around that. But I think in terms of what is attracting and certainly why they're looking to come here at this point in time, there are a whole raft of in new investment strategies for Queensland, and certainly a lot of them are actually being driven out of those councils. So there are, in many cases, incentives for people to come and then certainly to invest. And there is a lot of other agencies that are working through some of those issues to make sure that, they are doing the right thing when they come. Obviously, that they understand, all of the regulation that we have, which is quite unlike, many other parts of the world. But we are seeing more and more investment, especially with some of the big projects that are happening. So obviously you hear everyone talk about the Olympics, but there are some other really big things happening in Queensland, including a heavy lifting space station that's going into the Cape, which no one seems to know about, but it looks like it's booked out for the next couple of years with the US, which is really exciting. So there is a lot of infrastructure happening in terms of ports, certainly a lot of debate around what's going to happen with rail, and so we are seeing more and more investment, especially around that sort of Sunshine Coast and above area. We're seeing quite large numbers of people and different demographics going into places like Bundaberg, for instance, and starting up new industries. So the DESBIT is currently working on a whole raft of emerging industry funding and certainly skilling as well. So for anyone looking obviously to come in or invest, it's a good idea to touch base with them.
Yeah, look, and now in our sector, there's a lot of movement happening as we speak. Yeah, it's interesting times for us, that's for sure. Okay, so look, there's no other questions. So other than thank you for all your support that you're showing to the industry. I guess I have one question for you in relation to your dispute resolutions. You're heavily gauged towards leasing disputes, and I have to say that there's been a lot of our members throughout Queensland, in particular Central Queensland, that have engaged in your services and had some fantastic outcomes. So again, thank you for that. But is there scope for dispute resolutions more gauged towards partner disputes or supply disputes?
Yeah, there is. And in fact, we do get a lot of partnership disputes that come through. And, often it is a really good way to get two parties to come to the table and get to an outcome. And we are seeing more and more of those and more diversity in the disputes that are coming to us. In terms of supply, sometimes if it is an international supplier, it can be difficult for us to intervene. But, a lot of the time, both parties are often willing to come to the table if they are within the state. Just to work through those things, because obviously it's uncomfortable for everybody, and mediation is a really good, alternative dispute resolution.
Absolutely. Wonderful. That's fantastic. There's some fantastic insights there, and I'm sure all those that are watching today are going to take a lot from today's webinar. So other than that, there's no other questions, so we'll wrap it up. I know we're dead on time, half an hour is what we predicted, so we won't go over. And yeah, so thank you very, very much again for your time today, Commissioner, and we look forward to working with you again, and we'll put all of this information out to our members in our next newsletter. So
wonderful. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you. Appreciate your time. Thanks, everyone.